my name is Jenny Tyler, and I am an associate attorney in Jacksonville, Florida with Edwards and Ragatz, and I'm part of the Student Education and Admission to the Bar Committee, and we are so excited to be putting on this CLE today about mentoring in the public interest sector. We have some really awesome speakers today that we can't wait for you to hear from. And we're super grateful to the Henry Latimer Center for Professionalism for help facilitating this. So for now, I'll throw it to Ida Newmoten to introduce Justice Sasso.
Hello, my name is Ita Newmoten, and I am the Regional Counsel for the Second Region of Florida. Thank you for joining us today for the Florida Bar Student Education and Admission to the Bar Committee seminar on the importance of mentoring. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce the Honorable Justice Meredith Sasso. On May 23, 2023, Governor Ron DeSantis appointed Justice Meredith Sasso to be the 93rd Justice of the Supreme Court of Florida. Justice Sasso was raised in Tallahassee. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Florida in 2005 and her law degree from the University of Florida in 2008, where she was a member of the Justice Campbell Thornall Moot Court Board. She began her career in private practice, representing clients in large loss general liability, auto negligence, and complex commercial claims in state and federal courts at trial and on appeal. She also served as guardian ad litem, representing abused or neglected children. In August 2016, Justice Sasso joined the Office of General Counsel to Governor Rick Scott, serving as Chief Deputy General Counsel. In this role, she represented the governor in litigation before the Florida Supreme Court, the First District Court of Appeal, and state and federal trial courts, among other duties. In January 2019, Governor Rick Scott appointed her to the 5th District Court of Appeal. Governor Ron DeSantis recommissioned her to the newly created 6th District Court of Appeal on January 1st, 2023, where she was elected by her colleagues to serve as its first Chief Justice. Please help me welcome the Honorable Justice Meredith Sasso.
How important is it for young lawyers and young professionals to have a mentor?
I think in the law field, in the law profession in particular, it's incredibly important. Unlike some other professions, we don't have a formal apprenticeship program. We don't have a residency requirement. And so we're mostly self-regulating in the sense that it's up to the individual lawyer to assess whether or not they have the skills to take on a particular case. If a lawyer takes a more traditional path and goes into a big firm, that gets a little easier to help make that decision because you have more experienced partners that you're working for. But it gets a little tricky when you go into a smaller firm with less experienced attorneys or you start out on your own. And in that case, because we are a self-regulating profession, it's critical to recognize your limitations as a new lawyer or even as an experienced lawyer without experience in the field that you've taken a case in, and filling in those gaps so you can make sure that the client that you're serving, whose life, liberty, or property is on the line, is getting the service that they deserve.
Absolutely. Can you share an experience where mentoring positively impacted your career?
Sure. So every aspect of my career has been impacted by mentoring in one sense or the other, but probably one of the more demonstrable areas was when I started trying jury cases. I started out with more of an appellate practice and then started trying jury cases mid-career, which isn't necessarily a traditional path. And because I had this experience in appellate law, what to do in a jury trial was mostly kind of an intellectual idea to me. And I knew objections, I knew the substantive law, but as people who have tried cases in front of juries know, there's a lot more to trying a case than knowing the law. And so I had a mentor who came in and sat second chair, not because he was the least experienced lawyer, but because he was kind of providing me critiques and tips in the moment. And after going through one jury trial, having a mentor correcting me in real time, giving me tips in real time, explaining how I could be more engaging to a jury in real time, that set me up for huge success down the road in my jury trial career because I had those soft skills that you can only learn through experience. And so rather than trying to learn by trial and error while a client had their business on the line, I was able to get as experienced as I could with the benefit of a mentor, and apply that down the road.
Awesome. What role, if any, do you think mentoring played in your career as a justice specifically?
Yeah, so the judiciary is kind of a microcosm of the legal field overall, in the sense that unlike other countries, we don't have a judicial path. Some countries you start out going into the judicial path and you're kind of trained up in the way of a judge before you actually start deciding cases. By contrast, in the United States in general, and Florida specifically, as soon as you take the oath, you are tasked with deciding cases pursuant to the law. There's no training period or room for error. Obviously, we have, judicial education and all of that, but you have to be ready on day one. And so I was lucky that I started on appellate court, which is just naturally a collaborative environment. But even within that environment, I had to specifically seek out mentors. The judiciary assigns mentors to new judges, so that helps. But I took that a step further. I had to realize that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I quickly identified people across the state of Florida that I thought could help me both with my writing, my analysis. It helps to, bounce ideas off of, how we're going to craft a specific rule or answer a specific legal question. And it's a continuing process in the judiciary. Even going from the district court to the Florida Supreme Court, there's now a new skill set that I have to develop. And again, while I have to be ready on day one, I have to recognize what I don't know. And so being able to draw on the more experienced justices, we have, Justice LaBarga and Justice Kennedy, who have been serving as long as I've been admitted to the bar, being able to have the benefit of their experience and their advice, and being open to the idea that they do have more experience, and their advice is worthwhile, and I don't know what I don't know, has been really important in the new role as well.
It sounds like you have a lot of mentors and you've had a lot of mentors in your career. What do you think makes an effective mentor in the legal field?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I found that makes it an effective mentor is having someone who is not afraid to criticize. And as millennials move into the mentorship role, that's not something that we are particularly comfortable with. We grew up in more of the participation trophy and you can do anything if you believe in it sort of environment. And so providing constructive criticism as a way to pour into somebody and to help them grow and not being afraid that they're going to be offended is a skill that maybe generationally hasn't been practiced as much. And so I had some mentors who were very blunt with me. I remember the first brief that I wrote, my mentor gave it back to me and said, "We have to work on your writing. This is not good." And it was just kind of a wake-up call. And so I think mentees have to be able to receive that advice, but mentors have to be able to say what the mentee needs to hear, directly and in a constructive way.
I agree. What advice do you have for someone that is seeking a mentor?
I think the challenge with seeking a mentor in this day and age is that so many people are working remotely. And so a lot of my mentoring came organically. I was in an office with a lot of attorneys that were senior to me. I sat in on phone calls. I watched them handle lawyers who were having a bad day. And I was able to pick up so much through osmosis. And you lose a lot of that when you're in a remote working environment. And so one piece of advice would be to the lawyers who are in a remote work environment, to seek out whatever opportunity they can to be around people in person. So whether that's, opting in for a couple of days in the office, or picking up the phone and actually calling the attorney that they're working for rather than sending a string of emails. Doing whatever you can to create those organic experiences. The other thing that I would say is that I think a lot of young lawyers can be frustrated by the fact that they feel like they don't have a mentor. And if that is the case, if you feel like there is not a person in your life that is mentoring you, I think you can still fill those gaps. For example, if you're trying to get to be a better writer, mimicking good writers is one of the best ways to do that. So you can think about, getting mentoring just by reading as many good briefs or good opinions or whatever it is that you're trying to emulate as you can. There's so many podcasts and online CLEs. I would just encourage people to fill in the gaps, even if they feel like they haven't found that one human to shepherd them through the legal field.
And we focused a lot about you as a mentee, but as a mentor, what challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them?
I think the primary challenge for a lot of people in a mentoring posture is just time constraints. Particularly those of us who are juggling careers and young children. It's hard to find the time to do anything other than what we absolutely have to do. And so one of the ways that I've tried to mentally frame it is that mentorship is part of the job, not apart from the job. And I think, if you just look at it as part of your overall workday, this is not only my obligation to the people who are working for me, but to the profession as a whole. It's a lot easier to not see it as something extra I have to do. It's just part of the job.
I like that. As a toddler mom, I have definitely felt that.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for individuals who want to become effective mentors in their careers?
Mm-hmm. I think in terms of effective mentoring, one of the tips I would give, I guess, is just to accept the fact that you have value to add. I think so many of us can be critical of ourselves, and knowing that whether or not you have the perfect answer to this person's question or the skill set that a mentee is trying to obtain, knowing that you've been through it, it's a real experience, and sharing that unique perspective, and then the mentee from there can kind of gather alternative perspectives and pick their best course. But rather than trying to be perfect, just being what you are.
Yes. And how might mentoring inspire the legal professionals of tomorrow to later contribute to their specialty in the law?
I think it's a trickle-down effect in the sense that I know I would not have been an effective lawyer without the benefit of mentors. And just having that in my background makes me want to help the next group of lawyers that are coming up so that they all have the benefit that I did. And I think, just being able to pay it forward, so to speak, is a really good motivator. And I think wherever we are in the legal profession, we can all benefit from having a long, enduring, generational group of effective lawyers who value the law, who value collegiality. And so just thinking of it as an overall goal versus, a specific time chunk of your day.
Thank you. And I think that's all the questions we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we're going to go back to Ida to introduce our next speaker.
Hello, my name is Itani Moten, and I'm the Regional Counsel for the second region of Florida. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Glen Bassett, Special Counsel, Florida Office of the Attorney General. Mr. Bassett's current position is Special Counsel for Civil Litigation for North Florida at the Florida Office of the Attorney General. He started there in 2003 and has worked almost exclusively in employment law since then. His total experience in employment and labor law is just over 30 years, starting while he was in the U.S. Air Force. Mr. Bassett grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, When he graduated from college in 1978, he also entered the Air Force as a lieutenant in the accounting field. After a few years, he applied and was selected as one of 22 officers worldwide to get his law degree while on active duty and became a JAG after law school. He performed the normal claims, administrative law, and military justice functions, and also was able to work in international law while stationed in England. There, Mr. Bassett negotiated with British Customs and Excise and British immigration officials regarding issues relating to service personnel and their families. He was a JAG for 9 years before retiring from the military. After his military service, Mr. Bassett worked for a couple of employment law firms, in-house counsel for the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, and had a solo practice. In 2003, he was hired by the Florida Office of the Attorney General. He has served under 5 attorney generals. Please help me welcome Mr. Glen Bassett.
And then, Glenn, we'll go back to you and start with some of the same questions.
Great.
How important
is it from just a little, a slightly different aspect is that, I think it's important not only to be a good lawyer, but to be part of the team where you're working. That it's a combination for mentoring as a law office. So my history is that I came up with a career in the U.S. Air Force. In the Air Force, military officers generally go to new bases every 2 to 3 years. And so what they do is they assign a mentor to new people in the office. This is for whether lawyers or accountants or whatever. And so that person is to help the new person to become comfortable in the office, acclimate the person, and help to bring them into part of the team early. Now, for lawyers, that would also be how do we do our business in this law office compared to what might be in other law offices. But it has mundane things like parking, food. You know, does the office have food? What are good restaurants? What are bad ones? Remind or work with them for the names of the others in the staff. We all get introduced, but if you're like me, after being introduced to 15 people, you remember maybe 1 or 2 names. So that person helps you with that. And then also, what are the duties of the staff? So in some offices, the staff might do save docket entries, input billable hours for the lawyer. They might work on dictation or other methods. They might calendar due dates, but maybe those are up to the lawyer in some law offices. And it's very important to have something like that, like calendaring due dates, to get that straight at the beginning so someone doesn't think that's being done by someone else and things get missed. Notices of depot, and then even routine motions. Does staff do that? Do the lawyers do that? Motion for extension of time or request a hearing by Zoom. Those are pretty routine. In some offices, that might be the staff. Other offices, that's the attorney. How do you do your emails, your signature block? Who should we CC in the office? What are opposing lawyers like that we commonly deal with? What are their foibles? What to watch out for? How do they try to do something that's maybe not appropriate? And how have we handled that in the past? That can save a new attorney weeks of frustration and mistakes by having someone guide the person through with those. Is the boss a stickler for attendance? And for staff, for attorneys, for both? How will they view complaints about the staff? If I think my staff person is doing poorly, is the boss going to be angry at me for bringing it to the attention? What about the office environment? Maybe there's rats in the office. Will the boss be receptive to hearing about that? And I use that because I know that one of our members here on the panel has run into that. Dress code. What's the office humor like? Is this one where you better not even come close to the line, or that everyone's going to be upset, or is it pretty open? And even what are the local police like if it's someone that's come to a new city? Now, qualities I think are good in a mentor. I think that they have to be a good listener and an active listener. But by the same token, I think it's important to be able to focus the attention of the person being mentored, that when that person starts rambling, to bring them back home, say, okay, what are you actually asking me? And what do you think the answer is? Some of the Socratic method, because you don't want the mentor to become totally dependent on, or the mentee totally dependent on the mentor, that it becomes the mentor making the decisions and the mentee just writing them down. And that can lead to a dependency that might be overdone. The mentor needs to be able to succinctly explain what they're saying. But I think also to think a little bit further than what the question is, and look at whether there are alternatives. That a mentor that says, look, there's only one right way to do this is often not the most benefit, because I think it's important to offer that, well, you could do it this way, you could do it that way, and then maybe bring out some more facts that, okay, what are your facts leading us to? Maybe more of number one, more of number two. But then also recognize that sometimes what the mentee needs is simply a yes or no. They're in a hurry, and that might not be the time for a war story. And because if you take too much time with the mentee, they may stop coming to you because they feel that it's taking too much time to get what they view as just a simple answer, and they may go to somebody else instead. And that can end up destroying the mentor-mentee relationship.
So I know you said that when you were in the military that they provided you a mentor every time you moved. Has
Yes.
your office decided to take that policy as well?
No, not officially, but
Okay.
that tends to be what we do. That try to take a new person under your wing, and assist them to the extent that they are comfortable with that. That's a good question.
Okay. And what, if any, role do you think mentoring played in your career?
Well, in mine, it saved a lot of false starts. It helped me to avoid some pitfalls that you might not have seen, or I would not have seen, but for some advance warning that this is what might come up in this sort of situation. Watch out for that, and this is how I handled it. You may choose differently, but this is what I did, which was really, really valuable to save me from making errors that easily I could have made if I had not been prepared in advance. And I think along the lines of ethics, it helps too. We learn it in school. It's different when you get on the job. That in even things as mundane as preparing a witness, that there's a line to be crossed there between interviewing and preparing a witness and putting words in their mouth. And so I think mentoring can really help to guide a new attorney or just someone new to that office with, this is how we do business here. It might be ethical to do it differently, but this is how we do it. And that's really important to avoid getting crosswise with the boss.
Agreed. Do you have any specific experiences that you believe mentor positively impacted your career?
Other than what I've said before, not really. It didn't change my career path at all, but it sure did help me from avoiding a lot of problems. And it made me more comfortable in the office to have kind of a built-in sounding board, almost a built-in friend to help me feel more comfortable and more part of the team early.
So I know you've talked a lot about qualities that you look for and things like that, and you want a good listener. What would you tell somebody who was looking for a mentor how to find that?
To a large part, it's going to be trial and error. Go try somebody, ask a question, try to make it a good question. They say there's no stupid questions, but there are. And so try it out on somebody and then try it out on someone else, but don't use the same question, or they'll think that you're just shopping for an answer you like, and that can give you a bad reputation. So, and so try it out with different people and see who you're comfortable with, who is meshing well with you and giving you enough, but not too much.
How important do you think it is for a young lawyer to have a mentor?
Well, I think for any new lawyer in an office, it's very important, even an experienced or older lawyer, but especially for the young lawyers who have not had a lot of litigation experience or appellate experience, if that's where they're working, to have someone to help show them the ropes and help them through what may seem to be important but is not really important, and other things that may seem trivial but really are important. And that's hard to, you don't know that as a new lawyer starting off, that it takes a long time to develop that through experience. And that's the real help, the biggest perhaps helpfulness of a mentor is to instill some of that experience right off the bat, so that you don't have to do it by trial and error.
As a mentor, what challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them?
I think the biggest challenge is when the mentee seems to be listening but is not. that and that makes me hesitant to give advice next time. But what I've tried to do is to point that out, that it really didn't seem like you were paying attention, or I did advise you this way and you did it differently. Why was that? Was it because I wasn't clear? Was it because you disagreed? And if you disagree, isn't it better that we talk about that in advance? So try to develop a dialogue about that.
And what advice would you have for the mentor to be more effective?
Well, to try to track what you have advised the mentee, and how well that has worked, and to then try to adjust when you talk to them next time. If it didn't seem to go well, again, is that because they didn't really hear you? So do I need to explain it more thoroughly? Maybe I need them to repeat it back to me next time, so that I can be more effective, so I can realize where I'm reaching them and where I'm not.
Okay. And then how do you think that mentoring is changing in our legal profession?
Well, I think Justice Sasso was very much on target about changes from so much remote work, that we're doing this remotely. It's not the same as if we're in person with a group, where we can read the room and where we can get better feedback. Even with Zoom and we can see people's faces, it isn't quite the same as being there in person. And so I think mentoring remotely is much more difficult to do well. And so that makes it more work to make it work well. So yeah, I certainly agree. The more we can do mentoring person to person, I think is much better. And that's one of the big challenges. And then perhaps to overcome the mindset, again, as Justice Sasso was saying, that of the trophy just for showing up. I really hate that one movie, that 90% of life is just showing up. No, it's not. That is a threshold mandatory before we begin life. But that's just my personal opinion. But try to avoid that in our mentees, that look, yeah, just showing up, that's not enough. You have to participate thoughtfully.
And do you have any ending advice for mentors or mentees?
For both sides, strive for feedback. That they've said that in management classes for ages and ages. Fight for feedback. So that's both for the mentee and for the mentor.
I like that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
And next I'll have Mr. Tony Ryan introduce our next speaker.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Tony Ryan. I'm the director of one of the offices of Criminal Conflict Civil Regional Counsel in Florida State Agency. It's my pleasure to introduce Leticia Medina-Richman. Since November of 2024, this past November, Leticia is the executive director of Florida Rural Legal Services. Florida Rural Legal Services, or FRILS, it's a civil legal aid office, one of 5 offices in Florida that receives funding from Legal Services Corporation, federal funding. FRILS is down here in south and sort of central parts of Florida. It's in 13 counties. The cities are like West Palm, Fort Pierce, Lakeland, Fort Myers, Immokalee, coming back around to Belle Glade. It's bi-coastal. So there's a lot of counties and a lot of towns and cities, and also FRILS serves the farm worker community anywhere in Florida. Leticia comes to us from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where she practiced for over 25 years in the civil legal aid practice area. She is a graduate of Smith College, and she went to Northeastern University School of Law. And before taking on this position, executive director of FRILS, Leticia's most recent position in Massachusetts was the chief operating officer of a community legal aid organization called Community Legal Aid in Western Massachusetts. So it's my privilege to be able to introduce Leticia. We're glad to have her at FRILS and have her here in Florida and have her as part of the panel. Leticia, in your opinion, especially, if you, I'm sure you thought about these questions from the standpoint of your practice area, civil legal aid, the public interest sphere. How important is it for young lawyers in this practice area to have mentors?
I think it's very important for all young law professionals to have mentors. I came from a program where, and I'll say that I think of supervision and mentoring a little differently. Not everybody has robust supervision. I had the privilege of having robust supervision, and the program I came from had robust supervision. But there's lots of opportunities to mentor in that role as well. It's just a little different. But when I think of mentors, I think of people who are not responsible for your work product, who aren't responsible for, and that could be somebody in your organization who isn't your supervisor. But really, that's how I think of mentorship. And mentors serve as sounding boards. They can help you work through substantive legal issues as well as legal skills issues, problems with a coworker, problems with your supervisor. They can also share their own early experiences and normalize a lot of what younger professionals are going through right now, so that they don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only person, nobody understands what's happening, or this is just happening now. So they can really help to normalize different things that people are dealing with and experiencing. And they can help young law professionals with building skills and building connections related to their longer term career goals. So if you have a mentor in where you work, then your long-term career goals may not be the same as what theirs have been. But generally speaking, those of us who've been practicing longer know more people, and we know people who have been practicing as long as we have been practicing, and have connections to offer to our mentees.
Very good. And how about yourself? Can you share some specific experiences where mentoring positively impacted your career?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I had the deputy director of my last program. She and I had been in that program for a long time in various roles, and she spent many years sharing information, suggesting ways for me to grow and expand my own knowledge base, encouraging me to reach beyond where I was in the moment to seek out the next opportunity. And she's not the only one. There were a number of people who were great at bringing me along, like come along and watch me do this thing. Come along and observe this, this trial, this event that I think is going to be helpful to you, based on where you are now and where you want to grow. And I know that the deputy director at my old program was very instrumental in my move from being a staff attorney there into management, and played just a really large role in me being promoted to greater roles with more responsibility, more opportunities. So definitely the time that she put into my career and my development has been a positive impact for me.
So it sounds like mentoring has played an important part in your career.
It definitely has. I think a greater role than I would have thought in the moment that certain things were happening. So I think, the idea that supervisors can be mentors hadn't occurred to me, but a lot of the opportunities that I had, or that were offered to me, suggestions about roles I could pursue, those things positioned me to have skills and experiences for opportunities that I later wanted. And it included things like participating on boards of nonprofits in the area that I lived in being on the Access to Justice Committee in Massachusetts, or taking on particular projects, or learning certain skills that were really outside of my job category. And then later on, I was able to leverage a lot of that into finding and qualifying for better jobs.
Excellent. So what qualities do you think make for an effective mentor?
So some of them have been mentioned already, good listening skills for sure. But I think mentors need to be interested in promoting the growth and advancement of other people. I think, they have to be, I think Justice Sasso said this already, that they have to be willing to make an honest assessment of other people's skills and talents. I really believe they have to be willing to make connections between people, whether it's a connection to promote someone for an opportunity or to give them access to resources that the mentor doesn't have. But I think you have to start with an interest in others and in their growth and their development, if you're going to mentor effectively.
What advice do you have for a young lawyer who's seeking a mentor, who hasn't maybe been able to make a natural connection?
Yeah, I think before seeking a mentor, somebody has to think about what it is they're looking to learn or grow in or achieve, because that's going to inform who might be a good mentor for them. And it doesn't have to be one mentor. You don't have to have just one mentor. You might have someone who mentors you in your legal writing, someone mentioned earlier, or someone who mentors you in specific trial skills. But you have to be clear about what it is you're looking for. Because experienced people have more experience. Like, there are hundreds of things they can teach you. But if they're not living the work life, for instance, that you're looking to have, or they don't have the skills or connections that you're looking for, they may not be the best mentor for you. And you also want to find someone who's going to make time for you and be honest with you. Because to me, a mentor isn't an everyday supervisor, but they still need to be able to spend enough time with you to know who you are, and to help you in the ways that you've identified you're looking to grow in. And they have to be willing to tell you if something you're doing is hurting you in pursuing your goals, because mentors shouldn't just be cheerleaders. I think good mentors are cheerleaders for you, but that's not the only role they serve, and they understand that and they take that seriously, giving that constructive feedback. I think someone mentioned earlier, it's not easy and sometimes it hurts a little, but it's the thing that's going to help you grow and get to where you're looking to go.
And so have you yourself been a mentor? You've had these important management positions in your organizations, and you mentioned mentoring and supervising, not exactly the same thing. So you clearly have been a supervisor, but have you been a mentor as well?
I have. I have mentored a number of people, and I realized something I realized just today, I think, is as you become, as you have more responsibility in your roles, depending on the kind of office you're in. I'm the executive director here. So I'm like the top of the management chain here. I'm mentoring all the time, whether I'm intending to or not. People are learning things from me every single day. And so when I go by someone's office and I talk to them, I'm pouring into them something either that's going to be positive and beneficial to them or something that's not going to be. So I think in certain roles, you're mentoring whether you intend to or not. And so that's kind of where I am now. It was where I was in my last role as well. But I have, through my career, really looked to help certain people achieve the goals that they want. I've looked at opportunities for them and said, this seems like something you would be good at. I think you should try for it, whether or not they thought that it was something that they should try for it. So I have done, and even in the supervisory role, it is more than just do this or don't do that. Because again, there's a lot you can teach people. And a lot of what I tried to do as a supervisor wasn't just to convey legal information or skills. I have a way of thinking about life and work and what's important. And when people expressed a desire to have better work-life balance or, do certain things, I made sure that I shared, I am where I am. And if this is somewhere you want to be, then I can tell you I did not get here by working 80 hours a week because that wasn't my philosophy. And so I tried to share things beyond the practical and the legal, if I thought it was something that would help people in how they're thinking about work or thinking about promoting themselves or advancing in their careers.
And maybe I'm taking this a little bit out of order, but and I appreciate how that you've given these questions a lot of thought. But can you speak to maybe before we ask about some of the challenges that mentors can face, but can you speak to the question of why do you think it's important for the profession or this practice area for there to be mentor-mentee relationships?
I think, if legal professionals have mentors who are effective in their work and content with their achievement, it gives them a vision of what their professional life can look like. Because when you're new, the work can feel consuming. It can be hard. Maybe you're burdened by debt. And maybe you feel like all you can do is work as hard as possible. And that's what you need to do to rise to whatever the goal is, whatever you've identified as your goal. And if you have a mentor who has achieved their own goals, who can share how they created healthy boundaries or how they managed school debt while doing work they enjoyed, or share resources for mental health or addiction counseling because they needed them too, and that's something you're being challenged with, then you can start seeing beyond what's happening right now and see what is possible because you have someone in your life who has done it. Like they've gotten to this other place and it wasn't by magic, right? They weren't born under a lucky star. They didn't just have everything go their way. And so you can see, oh, wow, this person struggled in this way and they are happy with what they've achieved. They are content. They are doing things they want to do. That's what I want. And so I can see beyond the challenges now to what is possible. And I think that's what keeps people in the profession. I have seen a lot of people stay in legal services for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of people leave after 20 months because either they didn't count the costs of the difference in pay that they could get, or they didn't realize how hard it would be to work with people whose life is constantly in crisis, or some aspect of the job that just wasn't a good fit for them. And I think if you do that and you figure that out after 20 months is better than figuring that out after 20 years, that it's not for you. But certainly the people who last 20 years have figured out how to handle the challenges and the difficulties and be healthy. So and I think with mentorship, it's possible. And it's even possible for a mentor to help you see, you know what, this isn't for me. This isn't where I should be. This isn't the right fit for me. And that's okay. Like it's okay to recognize that. So
Very good. And what challenges, if any, would you say you've faced as a mentor?
So I think, as others have mentioned, mentoring takes time. So having enough bandwidth, enough time, enough mental space to give to another person is a challenge that I have faced in the past. And so I have started to be more intentional about how much time I have, more realistic about the bandwidth that I have. When I want to spend time with people, I calendar time with them so that it's protected. I used to just try to make it casual or spontaneous, but then we just would never connect. And if people ask me to spend time with them, I make sure that what it is they're looking for is something that I can commit to, because I have found it's better to say no than to constantly disappoint someone because I'm being well-meaning, but it's not really possible for me to do what it is they're asking me to do. I think the other challenge is recognizing that I'm not trying to mold people into me. Mentoring isn't about making people like me. It's about helping them be their best, whatever that looks like. So I've had to be a better listener, resist the urge to direct people down a certain path. So I've learned to ask more questions like, I heard about this opportunity. Is this something you think you would be interested in? Rather than, I think you should do this. So those are the two things that I think have been challenging for me.
And I think along some of the lines of your remarks, it sounds like maybe you have some advice to share for people who find themselves in a mentor role or want to be a mentor to another attorney.
Oh, absolutely. So I think if somebody is looking to be a mentor, wants to be effective, I think, you have to be honest about your own values, and you have to take time to understand the person who you're mentoring. You don't have to be just like your mentee or even share the same goals. You just have to be willing to be a resource, to be a guide, and to have a vision for what your mentee can achieve. Because a lot of what I've done as a mentor has been to connect people with others who have the life experience or legal expertise that the mentee is looking for. Like a really small example is we, in my old office, had an attorney who was Cape Verdean, and he worked with us for about 6 years, and then he moved on to another opportunity. And probably a year later, we had some legal interns for this summer. And I was talking to one when I was visiting one of the offices, and he was Cape Verdean. And he said, I don't know any other lawyers that are Cape Verdean, and I'm the first person in my family. And I said, do you want me to connect you with somebody? And that was really, really meaningful for him. It was also really meaningful for the attorney I connected him to, because he felt gratified that I thought about him as a potential mentor for someone else. And also had that same interest in knowing someone from his own cultural background who was pursuing the law. So just leveraging relationships has helped mentees with things that I couldn't personally help them with. And I've also had a vision for people and how they could grow. And I've shared that vision so that they could see something for themselves that they never considered. So another example is the person who is currently filling the role that I left, the COO role, is someone who never thought about applying for the role when it became available. And I strongly encouraged her to do that because, she was ready. She had the skills. I spent time with her just talking through, this is the job. This is what I've been doing for 2 years. This is the expectation, so that she could see for herself, okay, yeah, you know what, I could do that. It feels big, but I have the skills to do that.
Very good. overlook this question of what advice you might have for someone seeking a mentor. Did I ask you that already?
You didn't ask me
Yeah,
that,
right.
so you haven't overlooked it yet.
So, like for
Um,
example, you had the young Cape Verdean attorney, just kind of asked or happened to share that he didn't know anyone, from his background.
right.
But for lawyers out there who maybe, it doesn't. What advice do you have for young lawyers who may not have a natural
And I
opportunity?
think we did talk about this in earlier. I think I mentioned that being clear about what you're seeking
Mhm.
in a mentor is a big part of what people should do. So you did ask me this question already, Anthony.
Um, any final comments that you would have about mentoring, either in this field or, the importance, the significance that it has to our profession, generally speaking?
Just to say that mentoring pays back both sides. I have learned a lot and gained a lot from being a mentor, from seeing people grow, from watching people pay it forward and see their own value. I think when we pour time into people, they realize that they are worth the time, and they remember that, and they're willing to pour time into other people, even colleagues. Some of the people I've mentored, I've seen them make an effort to be a good colleague, to be somebody who's as experienced or inexperienced as they are, supporting them in ways that they're getting supported. So I think it pays everyone back, which helps. I don't know of a profession that wouldn't be helped by people being interested in each other. So I think whether it's people, and I've had great relationships with people who are on the other side, right? Because you're interested in them as a human. So you can connect on a human level. And when you're on the other side of the table, you're doing your jobs, but you're doing it in a way that is respectful and, looks to maybe take down somebody else's case, but not them as a professional. So.
Well, thank you very much for those thoughtful comments and
My
insights.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Jerry Edwards. He serves as a staff attorney for the ACLU of Florida, where his work focuses on free speech and bail reform. Prior to joining the ACLU in 2021, he graduated from the University of Florida Levin College of Law. He clerked for judges in both the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit and the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas. And he also served as an assistant solicitor general to the Kansas Attorney General. So thank you for joining us, Jerry.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to ask you some of the same questions we've talked about already, but how important is it for young lawyers and law professionals to have mentors?
Sure, and I'll try not to cover too much of the same ground as everyone else, although I'm sure that I will have overlapping advice. Very important, in my opinion, based on my own career. Practicing can be intimidating. It can be challenging, especially when you're early in your career and you're doing things for the first time. It's very scary. So having mentors to bounce ideas off of, to serve as a sounding board, go to for advice, and to show you the ropes, it makes things easier because you feel more comfortable doing things for the first time if you have somebody who can talk it through with you. So it builds confidence in young attorneys, and it really puts them in a position to succeed.
Could you share a specific experience where mentoring positively impacted your career?
Sure. And so there are a lot of experiences I could share. I intentionally am going to choose one that feels a little trivial, but as a person who started off my career clerking for federal judges and then into an appellate role for government, and then moved over to the ACLU of Florida, I had never filed a case before. And so my first case at the ACLU of Florida, as I'm going to file it, I kind of realize I have no idea what I'm doing here, and I have no idea how to file this case. Now, I can sit here and stare at the screen and try to work my way through CMECF. I'm familiar with it. But it's going to take a lot of time. Or I had a senior attorney I worked with who I had a really good relationship with and was, very comfortable serving as a mentor. I could call him up and just say, hey, I'm doing this. Can you walk me through what I'm doing here? Did that, filed it, got it done in 5 minutes instead of taking 30 minutes to an hour to do something that was very easy. And the reason I felt comfortable doing this because he made it very clear from the time I started working at the organization that, hey, listen, there are going to be new things you're doing, and I'm happy to be there as a resource for you. And so, as silly as I felt asking this senior attorney who'd been doing it for 15, 20 years, how do I file a case as a person who was not just fresh out of law school? I did it because I knew we had that sort of relationship. And I knew it was going to save me time that would be valuable to work on other things. And now that I had done it once, I knew how to do it moving forward. I wasn't worried about messing it up, doing something wrong, and blowing the case, even though it really was not. The stakes weren't that high. And I think, sometimes just having a person who you trust and who they could serve as a sounding board for the big things. Maybe I'm thinking through a new theory of law and I want to talk it through with a person who's been there, done that a million times, and they're going to point out the weaknesses to me, and then I have to go back to the drawing board to strengthen it. Or maybe it's something that seems really trivial. I'm doing my first discovery request. Can you point me in the direction of one from the case you did? Oh, I have some questions based on what I saw from what you did, and I'm trying to figure out how I can apply it to the case we're currently working on. I'm an attorney who, early in my career, I like to do things that are challenging, that are new, even though they intimidate me, but it certainly makes it easier to do those sorts of things, to, first chair a trial, to argue an appeal, to take and defend a deposition as a young lawyer. When you have somebody you're working with who you can talk through your fears, who you can talk through how to do it properly beforehand, and who will serve as a sounding board. And they're going to be patient with you and not just hang up the phone after saying, figure it out. This is not worth my time. So I think it was very valuable for me to have that sort of mentor. Every attorney has different needs of what they need of a mentor, but that was what I needed, is somebody I could just talk things through with when I was doing it for the first time.
I think you touched on a little bit there, but you are a young lawyer. You're still in that mentorship part of your career. You're not always the mentor. You're still a bit of a mentee. So how specifically have you found mentors that match your style and what you need?
Yeah, and I think part of it is just maybe being a little bit lucky in the sense that the places where I worked, whether that was clerking for federal judges, whether that was serving as an assistant solicitor general, or now with a staff attorney role at the ACLU of Florida, I've worked with people who are just very kind and generous people. And so while each of them had their own kind of distinctive working style, their own distinctive mentoring style, I'm a person, I can be kind of flexible, and just if they're willing to give me their time and be generous with it, I can make use of what they have to give. And each person maybe has different things to give, but just having these senior attorneys who have been there, who have done that, to give that sort of feedback has been valuable. So I've been blessed in the sense that where I've worked, I've had strong mentors. And that's not always true for young attorneys. Sometimes you have to be a bit more industrious in trying to go out and find somebody, because where you work, maybe you don't have a lot of senior attorneys, or maybe those senior attorneys just don't have the time to help you, or they didn't have mentors early in their career. And so they think the best way to mentor is just, hey, jump in the swimming pool and figure out how to swim yourself. And so I wasn't in that situation. I feel very blessed not to be, but I think for me, it was just saying, okay, I know this attorney has done this a million times. I know they're great at it. I know that, this is how they like to mentor, and I'm going to take what they can give me and use it. So I'd say for the, young attorney, if you have attorneys who are willing to give you their time, I think the biggest thing you could be is flexible and open to what they have to offer. Sometimes some attorneys are very blunt, other attorneys are very encouraging, but it's just seeing that, yes, they're trying to help you in their own special way, and you just have to be open-minded and willing to take maybe blunt feedback, maybe harsh feedback, and try to find what can be helpful to you rather than maybe being offended that they just tore your work apart. And I'll tell you, as a person who has been at this now for, it's 27, I graduated in 2017, so it's been about 8 years. I still have experienced very brilliant attorneys tear my work apart, even now. And I expect that'll continue moving forward. And so, for me, I treat it as a learning experience. I'm not the sort of person where I think my work is perfect. It's always a little scary to give it to somebody you respect and have them tear it apart, but it's going to make you a better attorney. And you just need to come into it with that mindset of they're trying to help me get better at this.
So I think you touched on it a little bit with that, but what advice would you give to somebody who's seeking a mentor?
Yeah, I think if you have mentors in your workplace or mentors you work with if you're a litigator on cases as co-counsel, that's great. That's really an ideal situation where you don't have to go outside of your work to find mentors. You may still do that because you want different perspectives, or maybe you're thinking of a different area of law you'd love to try out and you want to talk to people in that area of law. Maybe that works for you. But if you are a person who is in a workplace where it's hard finding that mentorship, because again, you don't have a lot of senior attorneys you work with, or your senior attorneys just, they are not interested in mentoring, or they don't really know how to mentor because they didn't have mentors early in their career. I think you just have to really look for something. And maybe that's going to your local bar association events. Maybe it's going to other networking events. Maybe it's reaching out to people who are in your practice area that you don't, you're not going to have issues with confidentiality, or you're not going to be up against cases, and just trying to be deliberate about, hey, let's go grab some coffee. I'd love to talk to you. And obviously, I think, as others mentioned earlier, there's going to be some trial and error. Some people are just not going to be the right fit. But if you are, outgoing, if you're willing to put yourself out there, I think you can find mentors. There are a lot of attorneys who value it, who want to give back, who see it as paying forward the mentorship they received. And even if they don't work with you, they're willing to spend their time and act as a sounding board for you, as long as you're respectful of their time and you're willing to actually make the first step here and reach out to them. And so if you don't have that person in your workplace, I think just look for them in other places in the profession, and don't be afraid to reach out to people without necessarily knowing them. Maybe you just went to the same law school. That's a sufficient enough connection to say, hey, fellow Gator, I'm in your practice area. I'm a young attorney. I would love to learn more about your career, how you've achieved what you have, and then let's grab some coffee. And that might build into a mentorship relationship.
What role, if any, did mentoring play in your career?
I wouldn't be where I am today without the mentors I had. Mentors I had in law school, law professors helped me get my first federal clerkship. My judge there helped me get a second one in appellate law. And then, my appellate judge helped me get my government job. And that government job really set me up well to get my job at the ACLU of Florida. And now at the ACLU Florida, having senior attorneys both within the ACLU and outside of it who I've worked with has really helped me to develop as an attorney, to now be comfortable running my own cases, leading my own cases, running my own investigations, and just now mentoring young attorneys with the ACLU of Florida, law students myself. And I still learn from the experienced attorneys I work with on a daily basis. I still am very much a mentee, but I've also been able to step into the role as a mentor. And so just having those people around me throughout my career who were supportive and who were willing to teach me has really helped me to kind of spread my wings and find the work I love and do it hopefully well.
So you talked about being supportive and making time, but what other qualities do you think make an effective mentor in the legal field?
Sure. So, I think patience is an important quality here for mentors. That was one thing, Benjamin, the attorney who worked with me, had. There's some attorneys who, if you called them up and said, I don't know how to file a case, they would have said, figure it out. This isn't worth my time. Benjamin was patient with me. Kind and encouraging. I think some attorneys are very comfortable, young attorneys are very comfortable accepting blunt advice. Some others, it may be difficult for them. And I think just to the extent you can, try to put things in a way that, as long as they're making a good faith effort, is building them up instead of tearing them down, and is encouraging them to continue to get better instead of making them feel like they're incompetent and don't know how to do their job. Empathy, being able to put yourself in the shoes of a young attorney and understand where they're coming from, why they're asking you that question, why they're so worried, about what they're doing. Experience, obviously, experience is really important when you're a mentor, so you can impart what you know. And finally, honest. You do have to, as others have said, you have to be able to, criticize constructively. You can't just say, "Oh, this work is perfect. You did a great job." When it's, when they make some mistakes, that's not going to help them. You have to be able to go through and say, "Hey, listen, I'm very encouraged by the work you did here. I think you're making progress. Let's talk through some of these things that we need to shore up. I know you can do this. Let's just cover these issues." And then, at the end, find a way to be encouraging. I think you did well here, but there's a way to do it better. I'm confident that moving forward, you will get these things down. So I think those are really important qualities for a mentor.
So you talked a little bit about how now you're stepping more into a mentorship role where you've previously been the mentee. What challenges have you faced as a mentor, and how have you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, as a young attorney, I think the biggest challenge for me, first and foremost, is like imposter syndrome, where I feel like I'm still a young attorney myself. I'm still doing a lot of things for the first time. How can I teach somebody else, when I feel like sometimes I don't know what I'm doing? But it's just recognizing, you know what, I've been at this for a while now. I have this experience. I can impart what I know to them, and what I don't know, I'll let them go to other attorneys within the organization and ask. And so just recognizing, hey, I have valuable experience. I can help them out, and making myself available, not doubting myself to the point where I don't serve as a mentor and kind of leave them hanging. And so that has been one thing I've kind of reckoned with, is saying, you know what? Actually, I do know what I'm doing to a degree. And these young attorneys who've only been at it a year, I can teach them some things that will help them with this case or help them with issues they're dealing with. And to the extent I don't know something, we can both go get that answer from somebody who's been doing it for 20 years, and learn something. And so not only can I help them, but I can put them in contact with the people who will know these things. Second, time. I think everyone's mentioned that, but you have to be deliberate about your time. You have to be deliberate about making time to be a mentor, because it's never going to be easy, especially for those of us who are litigators. It's not going to be easy when you've got a million things going on, where you've got a case that's a bunch of depositions are about to happen, another case that will soon be heading to trial, and trying to brief some other issue in a different case, to carve out time to be a mentor for a young attorney who is struggling. But there were people that did that for me, and so I feel it is my obligation to pay it forward to the young attorneys that I work with, is that, hey, if you need this help, reach out to me, text me, and I will put in my schedule an hour for us to talk this through, and you will get that full hour of my time undivided. And you can count on that. If you don't need the full hour, great, but you have that hour to talk this through. And so, being deliberate about the time, it's hard, but you have to do it. And then finally, patience. I think, it's easier for me being a young attorney, because I can remember those times where I was scared and intimidated early in my career, because they weren't that long ago. But you have young attorneys who come to you looking for advice on things, and you're like, oh, I feel like you could figure that out, or you should know how to do that. It's just about putting yourself in their shoes and saying, well, when I was in their shoes, I really didn't feel very confident when I was doing that for the first time. And so maybe I can just, I think they're just looking for validation that they're not going to make a mistake. So I can just talk it through with them. And I'm sure that they will get it. And so just being able to, have that patience to say, well, I think you could figure that out. Let me be that sounding board for you, because I have that capacity now, and it'll make you feel more confident in what you're doing.
And I know you kind of just brought all of those up, but what advice do you have for individuals who want to be effective mentors in their career?
Sure. Making time, patience, building confidence, and communication. I think you've got to be direct in your communication. If you don't have the time at that moment, let them know. I can't do it this week. Let's talk next week. Or, if you need to talk to somebody this week, I can't do it, but, X person might be able to talk with you. Let's reach out to them and see if they can meet with you. And then when you're actually engaged in the mentoring, just being direct with what you're seeing, with what they need to know, and how they can improve as an attorney, how they can get better. I think those are really the most important things.
How might mentoring inspire the legal professionals of tomorrow to later contribute to their specialty in the law?
Yeah, my perspective is, I think if you want to build the next generation of lawyers, especially in your niche, but even not necessarily in your niche, maybe they go in a different direction, you've got to be willing to pay it forward. Because if people can't find mentoring in civil rights law, if they just can't do it, a lot of them are going to say, as much as I'm interested in this, it's just really impossible for me to figure out how to move forward. And I don't know how to get my foot in the door. I don't know what I'm doing. This is just stressful. I'm getting burnt out. I want out of this. For me, example. And so I think, helping to make attorneys who are more confident and better attorneys moving forward, that is really important. And then giving them the support they need that's going to make them want to stick around if they like that area of law, so that they know, hey, I'm really struggling with the emotional toll of this job. How do you deal with those issues? Well, this is how I've dealt with it. I've found it emotionally taxing too, but I have found these channels of dealing with those emotions that have allowed me to kind of overcome the burnout that sometimes gets to certain other attorneys. Just being able to go through strategies that help people to sustain themselves in public interest law. Those things can be important. And so, if you really do want to ensure that there are future generations who are, entering and staying in your area of law, I think the best way you can do that is by mentoring them. And so, for a person like me who's passionate about the cause, maybe there's some self-interest in it, but it's also about, respecting the people who gave back to you by giving back to others and hoping they'll do the same thing when they're in your shoes.
Do you have any closing advice for mentors or mentees in general?
Sure, I'll say two things. For mentors, for those of you who are attorneys who did not have good mentors early in your career for one reason or another, please be deliberate about remedying that for the next generation of attorneys. Be a mentor for them, do your best, make the time. And maybe you won't be perfect at it, but just making the time and making the effort is going to do, it's going to be helpful for them. And mentees, if you are struggling to find a mentor in your workplace or with somebody you work on cases, as I said earlier, just reach out to people. You will be pleasantly surprised how helpful and generous so many attorneys are. And I know I tell law students that all the time. Listen, you don't need to know me. You don't even need to have a connection with me. You don't need to have gone to the same law school or gone to the same undergrad. Just reach out to me. If I have the time, I will make the time to talk to you about my career path, about what I do for my work, how you can get into this work. I'm always happy to do that. And I think that's true of a lot of attorneys. And so just be willing to put yourself out there. If people reject you, so be it. Somebody is going to make the time for you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our speakers today. We really appreciate you guys coming to talk to us about mentoring in the public interest sector.